There is a very strange kind of exhaustion, not because of arguments, not because of hatred, and not because the other person has done something wrong, but because you have been together for too long, and you no longer see yourself in it. Everything is still fine. There is still someone at home. Life still runs on schedule, but inside, there is emptiness, quietness, as if you are living someone else's life. And the truth is, many people get married not out of love, but out of fear. Fear of loneliness, fear of being left behind, fear of falling out of sync with the social clock, fear of instability if there is no one by their side. So they choose safety over aliveness, choose what is reasonable over what actually feels connected. And then, over time, very small signs begin to appear. You can no longer remember the last time you truly wanted to touch them, not because of coldness, but because your body no longer responds. Or there are moments that are very hard to admit. When they are not at home, you actually feel a little lighter, breathe a little easier, not because you dislike them, but because at that moment you do not have to keep performing a role. If this sounds familiar, you may have silently wondered, is this really all that marriage is? If that question is in your mind, this video is not here to accuse you. It is only here to explain one thing, what is really happening beneath that silence. Before going any further, there is something very important that needs to be said clearly. If you see yourself in these feelings, it does not mean you are selfish, it does not mean you are ungrateful, and it certainly does not mean the person beside you is at fault. There are many people out there who are good people responsible, not avoiding their duties, not breaking families, not doing anything wrong. They do almost everything society expects from a mature adult, and yet they still feel empty, not because they are greedier than others, but because they made their choice in a very human state, a state of fear, fear of loneliness, fear of being too late, fear of missing life's train. And when fear becomes strong enough, people stop asking, am I happy, and start asking only, am I safe? This is not a story of right or wrong. It is a story of two parts within every person pulling in opposite directions. One side is survival logic seeking stability, certainty, security. The other side is emotional need wanting to feel alive, connected, and true to oneself. And many people choose to listen to logic, not because they do not need emotion, but because they believe emotion can wait. What they do not realize is, emotion does not disappear. It only grows quiet, waiting for another moment to speak. There is something that sounds paradoxical, yet is very common. Many people enter loveless marriages not because they lack understanding, but because they understand life too well. They are intelligent, self-aware, and know what they are doing. But precisely because of that, they become vulnerable to invisible forces that few people notice. The first force is the social clock. It does not ring loudly, it does not pressure directly, but it is always there. Watching friends gradually settle down, get married, have children, build lives, while you remain standing still in one place, the brain begins to compare, not out of jealousy, but out of fear of being left behind. And at some point, the question is no longer who do I want, but am I still on time? The second force is the fear of missing out. Fear that if you let go of this relationship, there may be no one better. Fear that your standards are too high. Fear that you have run out of time to wait for that vague feeling called love, and then a very familiar sentence appears. It's time. Time to settle down. Time to be serious. Time to stop dreaming. When fear exists long enough, the brain changes how it makes decisions. It no longer asks, am I happy? It only asks, is this safe? And that is a crucial moment. From here on, people stop searching for love and start selecting candidates. Is this person stable? Reliable? Is the family suitable? Is the future clear? Everything becomes reasonable, logical, and proper. But in that process, one question is forgotten. When I am with this person, do I feel alive? And because that question is pushed aside for too long, many people only realize the answer after everything has already become tightly bound. To truly understand why so many people enter marriage while their bodies do not agree, we have to look a little deeper into a place very few people are taught to look attachment. This is not something abstract or complicated. Simply put, attachment is the way your brain and body learn, very early on, what love feels like, whether it is safe, and whether it comes with a cost. And what matters is this: Those lessons are often formed long before you're old enough to make conscious choices of your own. For people with an anxious attachment style, love has never felt calm. Love always comes with worry, fear of loss, and the sense that they must work hard to be kept. So when they meet someone stable, consistent, present, not disappearing, not playing push and pull, that person may not ignite deep desire, but they create a very powerful feeling, the feeling of not being abandoned, and in that state, they do not ask, "Do I desire this person?" They simply exhale and think, "At last, someone is staying." For people with an avoidant attachment style, the story is different. For them, deep intimacy once felt suffocating, even dangerous. Being seen too clearly, being needed too much, used to feel like pressure. So they unconsciously choose relationships that are not too close, not too intense, not too consuming, a relationship just close enough to exist, but not deep enough to make them lose control. And then something very subtle happens. Many people do not marry for love. They marry because their nervous system finally gets to rest. No more tension, no more waiting, no more guessing whether the other person will leave, but rest is not the same as desire. Safety is not the same as connection. And this is the core point. It is not that these people do not want love. Many of them deeply long for it, but because their past linked love with pain, instability, and loss. When a healthy love appears, their body does not recognize it as love. It feels too calm, too steady, too unfamiliar, and they label it as boring, when in reality, it is the first time love has not come with anxiety, and that confusion leads many people to make lifelong decisions, while their bodies quietly keep saying that something is not right. There is a truth that is uncomfortable but needs to be said gently. Settling rarely begins with a sense that something is wrong. It usually begins with a feeling of being reasonable, and because it feels reasonable, many people do not realize they are doing it. The first sign is that you do not truly long for them to come home, but you also do not want anyone else. There is no desire, only habit. The second sign is that relief outweighs excitement. You feel calm knowing you are not alone, but you rarely feel joy about being with them. The third sign is that your body avoids closeness, not disgust, not coldness, just a subtle reluctance, enough to keep you from wanting to linger in touch. The fourth sign is that you feel lighter when you are alone, not because you dislike them, but because in those moments you do not have to perform the role of partner, spouse, husband, or wife. You're simply yourself. The fifth sign is that you do not share your true inner world, your deeper thoughts, strange dreams, vulnerable parts. You keep them to yourself because you do not feel the need or do not feel safe enough to share. The sixth sign is that the relationship runs smoothly, but only on a logistical level. Finances, work, schedules, children, everything functions. Only emotion stands still. And the final sign, perhaps the quietest of all, you do not necessarily fantasize about another person. You fantasize about another version of yourself, a version that feels more alive, lighter, more real. If you see yourself in these signs, it does not mean you must act immediately. It does not mean you have to leave anyone. It carries only one meaning, that for the first time, you're being honest with your inner world, and that honesty, even before it leads to any decision, is already a very important step. There is a kind of loneliness that is very hard to name. It is not about coming home to an empty house, not about lying alone at night. It is about being next to someone every day, yet having no place in that relationship to set down your true self. You can talk, you can coordinate, you can function together, but you cannot open up. Not because the other person is bad, but because there is a gap that no one can reach. When you are not truly seen, you begin to shrink yourself. You speak less. You share less. You learn to keep your real thoughts inside, because saying them out loud would not change anything. And over time, that silence creates a very deep kind of loneliness. Loneliness even when someone is lying beside you. When you live in this state for long enough, the body does not rebel, it adapts. But that adaptation comes at a cost. Some people begin to experience a strange, low-level anxiety. Nothing major is happening, yet they are constantly tense, constantly tired, constantly carrying a tightness inside. Others move in the opposite direction, or they are not fully sad, not fully happy. They simply begin to shut down. No more excitement, no more curiosity, no more sense of being alive. This is a form of emotional numbness that is hard to recognize, because it does not break you, it slowly wears you down. And when a basic need like emotional connection is not met, people will find ways to compensate elsewhere. Some throw themselves into work, pushing to exhaustion, because at least there they feel valuable. Some retreat into imagination stories, what-ifs, connections that are not real but make their heart beat a little faster again. Others turn to addictive habits, not necessarily because they want to destroy themselves, but simply because they want to feel that something is happening inside. These behaviors do not make them bad people. They simply reveal emotional hunger. And there is one very important thing to understand. The body always remembers what the heart is not allowed to say. If you have walked with me this far, there are probably many thoughts moving inside you right now, and the most important thing I want to say is this. You do not need to decide anything immediately. This is not a video telling you what to do. This is a video asking you to stop lying to yourself. When the truth has been named, you will naturally know where you stand. In reality, there are only two paths. The first path is to stay and rebuild. If there is still respect between the two of you, still safety, still goodwill, then connection can be relearned, not by forcing emotion, but through honesty. By beginning to speak the things you have been swallowing for so long, by rebuilding friendship before expecting passion. The second path is to leave with dignity, not to run away, not to destroy anything, but to step away from a place where you have been numb for too long. That path requires preparation, confrontation, and a great deal of courage. But whichever path you choose, remember one thing. Being alone can be lonely, but disappearing inside your own life is lonelier still.